Chat live stream where we talk about photography and come together as a community and share this passion that we love. And it's just been a busy weekend for me, or a busy week, testing out a lot of new products. And let's see what comes out of it. I'm pretty happy so far. These are got a new tripod, and uh, finally they sent me a Insta 360 Ace Pro 2. It's working out pretty nice. So look for a review on this coming maybe next week or the week after. Let's see, but I got a few sample shots from that and a new lens. I don't know. I go in these like ups and downs on product reviews. Like sometimes I'm kind of into it and says, okay, just send it, I'll do it. Or other times I'm like, oh, I've had enough because it's a lot of work. But these products, I always try to pick things that are kind of interesting or good. And my thought was initially with this one, this thing is, can this compete with something like the TG7, right? Uh, and the short answer is not really. This is this, there's so many video reviews on this. This has been out like at least a year. Well, not at least a year, but almost a year. And it seems like they gave this out to mostly photographers, right? And not real hardcore vloggers and action people that go skiing and jet skiing and water skiing and surfing and, you know, drifting in their cars, like what this was designed for. This was given out, it kind of reminds me of like the Panasonic S9. They gave that to a bunch of photographers when it really should have gone to content creators, people that are vlogging and stuff and making videos. But anyhow, they sent this to me, and I have to look at it from a photography standpoint because I'm not really an sports action guy, right? I'm not out surfing and jet skiing and skydiving, those kind of things, or scuba diving and snorkeling. These are all outside of my window, by at least 20 years. Been good 20 years, maybe 25 years since I've been snorkeling, where this would have been kind of cool. But as a photographer's tool, it has a lot of things I think, particularly OM Systems, can learn from. Uh, Not necessarily for the TG7, but in their regular cameras, because this has a dedicated AI chip in it that does some really interesting things. So I'll talk about that. Well, I can talk a little bit about it today, but I just got this in like Friday, and I took it out yesterday and this morning. But it's it it does a lot of the AI chip in this does a lot of work in processing the photos and managing the videos that are not just OM Systems, but every camera manufacturer could learn from. But I think OM Systems, if they could get a jump on some of the things this can do, uh, it would be amazing. It'd be amazing. I mean, uh, like for example, I'm still getting the hang of this thing, but when you're recording video and you want it to stay level, you know, without a gimbal, I mean, an image stabilization is great. It's amazing in this, but the leveling feature, I could have the camera tilted this way or this way, and the horizon's always level. And then the auto cropping for vertical and horizontal, like the open gate kind of thing, and it stays low. That's amazing. And then the image processing that the AI chip does for HDR and dynamic range and everything. I mean, even in video is only 8-bit. The JPEGs that come out of this are 8-bit, and it's really doing some amazing processing. Uh, that again, I don't know any modern digital camera that can do this. If they can take this body and put an interchangeable lens system on it. And I don't mean those little clip-on things, that's crap. I'm talking about the actual interchangeable lenses on this. This this would be an amazing, amazing little camera. Or convert this into a compact camera with a zoom lens on it, like the LX100 and the Deluxe 8. It's already got a Leica branding on it, so they got some partnership with them, whatever that is, whether it's just an agreement to put their label on here or if there was actually some collaboration. Uh, the Deluxe 8 has the Leica zoom lens on it and the LX100 Mark II, and that would be amazing on something like this. Because yeah, the biggest problem I have with this right now as a photographer's camera is, just a super wide angle field of view. It's fun. I mean, I like to do wide angle panoramas and things like that, but this is if you're just stuck with that, that's a little rough. I like to sprinkle my portfolio with some wide angle, super wide angle shots and have some fun, but I don't like every single image I take to be super wide angle. So, it has some cropping ability and stuff like that in here, but um, it's not the same as having a real lens on here that can zoom in. But yeah, if this was an interchangeable lens camera, yeah, this would be pretty amazing. The low light capability, the resolution, it's 50 megapixels, and the AI processing of the images, it's uh it's pretty impressive. So, I'll do a review on this best I can. That's pretty much it though. Uh, but I think, if man, if they could do that in an interchangeable lens camera system like OM Systems, they would have a pretty big leap, on the video side and on the photography side, having a dedicated AI chip built in. I know the Sony has the dedicated AI chip for autofocusing, and as everyone knows, they have the best autofocusing, kind of. I I don't think it's leaps and bounds ahead of our own system camera, but it is pretty good. But this has impressed me in that respect, in everything except for the fact that it's just wide angle, which is the biggest problem with this as a photography tool. They sell this little grip on the side, which is it's pretty nice. It makes it pocketable, but it's a little bit overly bulky, right? Because you're assembling pieces together to create this thing. Whereas if it was like designed from the ground up as a camera, as just an interchangeable lens camera with the video capabilities that this has in it, this would be amazing. Um, so like I said, I've only had it 2 days, and I just went out yesterday and today with it. Uh, we'll see how it goes over the next week or so before I kind of come up with my final conclusions, and then I can be a little more concise about some of the features in it because there's a lot of really, really cool features. And I've been using Insta360 products uh, for years, starting with the Insta360, this thing. I've had this for many, many years. And I also have their Insta360 Go, the little tiny one. And I have their Insta360, it's an actually 360 camera that I use for work a lot. And so I've always, and in fact, the webcam I'm using right now is an Insta360 product. So I've bought a lot of their products in the past, and I've been very happy with it. Uh, given the quality and the price point and the things that it can do, it's they're making really good stuff. So so when they reached out to me for this thing, even though every creator, like Emily did an awesome job on this and many others, right, about reviewing this camera. Um, I definitely wanted to try it for myself, right? So just hold off a little bit on this if you've been thinking about this as a photography tool. Um, I still think the TG7 is a better choice in that respect because it has the zoom lens and it has amazing macro capability and it has a flash, um, you know, all that stuff. But I'll do some side by sides with the TG7 and this thing. This thing technically has better image quality, but it's not quite as usable as a camera, so to speak. Even though that's how I'm using this, and I'll try and do a little bit of vlogging with it. Um, but I can show you a couple of pictures actually. Maybe let me see if I have any. Yeah, I took this one this morning. Oh, my what happened to my loop deck? Oh, there we go. I took this one this morning using it. It's not bad. The colors are a little bit messed up. Uh, but yeah, me and Ellie went out this morning and did that. So, let's see. Is there anything else in this album? This one, this one. You know, super wide angle, right? And it has a rectilinear profile in it, so you can get the lines straight. But if you're going to shoot in RAW, you have to apply some profile to make the angles rectilinear. Otherwise, you get kind of a fisheye distortion. But I took this one yesterday evening, and oh, so is there anything else in here? Yeah, this one is pretty good. Uh, I went down to this. I've never been. I've only been to this park once before, I think, but I've never been down this trail. And there's a really tiny, tiny cascade of water coming down, which was not really worth photographing. Uh, so I took a picture of this dead tree that fell over. But see if there's anything else in here. This one, this one I took. I just stuck it out my car window and took this picture. It had the light rays that I saw with my own eyes were actually a little better than what we're seeing here. But yeah, there was that one. And I think that's it. I mean, I took a lot of pictures, but most of the pictures I took were with the Sony. Because I'm testing a new lens from seven. Is it? No, I'm sorry. Viltrox. The Viltrox has this super wide angle lens. It's a 14 millimeter that I'm going to be reviewing also. But what's interesting about this is that this lens is super cheap and it's super wide angle and it's for full frame. So it's pretty amazing in that sense. Okay. So one last thing is let me know if I'm live actually, because last week when I went live, I talked to myself for like 35 minutes before I realized I wasn't actually live. And I had to restart the stream like three times to get it to go online. I don't know what, there was some kind of glitch on YouTube or with my streaming software, but I couldn't go online. It looks like I'm live right now, but we'll see. But let me go to the chat. I'm really tired because I did several miles yesterday of hiking and walking around with these two things, uh, and then again this morning I've been getting up, like at 4 a.m. Okay. Oh, thank you, John. I was curious. So let me check the chat section. Good morning, Darko. Good to see you. And you went out with the Z7. That's cool. And fall is here. Yeah, temps are going to drop. This is a great time of year, at least where I live here on the East Coast in the US, in Maryland, where it gets really cold at night, like it gets down into the 50s, right? And then in the morning it warms up pretty quickly. So that creates a lot of fog in the morning. So I went out this morning. That's why I went out this morning because I wanted to try to capture that. Uh, let's see if I can show you one. Oh, this one came up pretty good. You get this really amazing fog and mist on the water in the mornings right now. So probably the all of October, I'll be able to get shots like this. So I'm going to go to different places and try and get shots like this. But uh, I could just feel it this morning and yesterday morning. I'm sure it was like this. I didn't get a chance to go out yesterday morning to this. I drove to the wrong. Like I said, I went to Prince William Forest Park yesterday. I meant to go to Fountainhead, which is where I went this morning. And I went down to Prince William Park and there's no lakes there. So no fog, right? Ah, what an idiot. Um, I meant to go here. So I said, I'm going to make it out there this morning. So I went, um, but yeah, that's one. Here's another one where you can kind of see all the fog and mist. So it was a really great time. This is a good time of year for these kind of shots to get these. And you can imagine like this shot here when the fall comes and these trees are all different colors. I have shots from other years like this. But yeah, this is going to be amazing. So definitely in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to go back out here and some other places to try to get some shots like that in the fall. I think this was Friday morning. I went out and I did a sunrise because it was one of the last few days where we had a partly cloudy sky and I could get some clouds. Um, but this is that Viltrox 14 millimeter super wide angle lens, right? Not that one. This one. This is one of them. There's me and Ellie. But and Ellie was having a blast. She loves to go out. It's funny. She's so smart. She knows, obviously when I put my shoes on or I pick up my camera, she's like ready to jump up and go outside and go with me, right? Uh, but sometimes I let her out, and if I close the door and I'm inside the house, she just walks around the yard, takes care of business, right? Uh, but if I close the door and I'm outside, she runs to the car. So she knows the difference between I close the door and I stay inside the house or I close the door and I'm outside of the house. Then she runs to the car because she knows that I'm taking her with me. If I close the door with her outside, if I close the door with her inside, she just runs up to the window to see where I'm going. Dogs are awesome. Okay, and then Darva says, do you ever feel higher megapixels as in the Z7 or higher assisting your ability to edit the image in case of a straight out of camera snap or 20 megapixels is a sweet spot for most images? Um, and with respect to editing, I don't see any difference between 47 or high resolution cameras versus low resolution. The editing part is about taking the image that you have and just making the best you can. So it doesn't matter the resolution in that case from my point of view because I've already composed the scene and I've shot it at the angle or field of view. I use the lens that I want, I compose the image, everything the way I want it in camera, and there's very little reason to crop because a lot of people like these high resolution cameras to be able to crop in. And I would say, like, if you have a Nikon Z8 with a 600 millimeter f4 or Sony A1 with a 600 millimeter, f4, $20,000 in gear, yeah, you can crop in for sports action wildlife, and you'll get a pretty decent image. For atmospheric distortion and all that aside, you can get a pretty decent image. But that is part of the problem is when you're cropping in because something's so far away, atmosphere becomes a big problem. Heat distortion, haze, all these things. So even though you're cropping in on a high res image, a lot of times, you're not really gaining any resolution. Uh, so, but anyway, all things being equal, you'll get a better image with a high resolution sensor and an equivalent focal length in the same composition. So that's the trick with sports action wildlife. But putting that genre aside, we're talking street photography, portraits, whatever, right? Um, the high resolution doesn't benefit me at all. Uh, because like I said, I composed the shot and 20 megapixels is more than enough. And it is very stressful to edit, a lot of stress on a computer to edit high resolution files. It's just too much. Um, especially when you're doing hundreds, if not thousands of images at a time, it takes up a ton of space on your hard drive and it just processing kind of chugs along. It's just slower, right? You know, you click something, you highlight something, and it just takes that little bit extra time because it has to process so many more pixels. And ultimately, when I deliver the images to Instagram or Facebook or even Flickr to some extent, I don't I don't see really when people are looking at it the way I framed it, it makes any difference if it was in high res sensor or low res sensor. So, I'm just extending off of your question from editing because editing in of itself is irrelevant to the resolution of the sensor. Editing is a whole different thing. Uh, so yeah, I don't, I don't see there's not a lot of benefit to high res sensors. But that's not to say I don't like it because when I put a when I take a picture with say my Fuji X-H2, 40 megapixels, and I get that high resolution image, uh, when I pixel peep, it just makes me smile and I say, "Wow, I can really see a little bit more detail here. This looks really nice." And there's a certain crispness to it, and it is nice the high res sensors. But and like I said, in terms of the final image, 20 is enough, 12 is enough, 5 is enough. I shoot with 10 megapixel cameras and my TG7. Really, the key to a really quality image in terms of image quality is the lens. If you have a really good lens, it'll deliver a very, very sharp image. And I've gotten extremely sharp images from my 300 millimeter f4. I've seen extremely sharp images from the recent 50 to 200 and the 150 to 400, of course. Those produce amazing images, and we're just the 20 megapixels, and it's really way more than enough detail. I also have a habit of pre-visualizing most frames taken with when in the field, deciding before I go 40, um, because it's 4 times the surface area, right, on a full frame sensor. So it's roughly 4 times the megapixels. I think these pixels are still large enough for a good signal noise ratio and small enough for detail. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, we're talking about, maybe 1 or 2 stops difference, right? Between APS-C, then going to full frame, and you could argue you could get 4 stops difference, with medium format, but, uh, seriously, if you really need to push and pull an image by more than 2 stops, it's time to start exposure bracketing your shot, and then, doing exposure blending and post-processing. Uh, I'm speaking from an enthusiast, hobbyist type thing where you, you're just taking photos for yourself, not necessarily professionally. Now, from a professional standpoint, if you're doing, you only can take one shot and you don't have time to exposure bracket, you got to capture the shot in the moment, like an event photography. Then, yeah, I can see people sometimes getting the exposure wrong or the flash misfiring. There could be issues where you do need to push and pull more than 2 stops. And you want to be shooting most likely with a, 24 megapixel full frame sensor. So you get the maximum flexibility in terms of being able to push and pull files. And it's really in the shadow areas. Because highlights, once you start clipping those, it doesn't matter if you're full frame or micro four thirds. I found that, yeah, clipping is a bigger problem. But it's typically you'll see people they underexpose their shots and they want to raise the shadows up without noise and et cetera, et cetera. So I can see that. But that said, uh, like Jimmy Chang shoots a lot of weddings, and Micro Four Nerds shot a lot of weddings on Micro Four Thirds gear. Uh, because they get the exposure they want in camera, and they only have to push and pull a little bit, 1 or 2 stops at most, and you can do that very, very cleanly with a Micro Four Thirds camera. Especially now with all the DxO software that's out there, you can really get squeeze out a lot from a Micro Four Thirds sensor without getting much noise. Um, let's see, but yeah, Henning, yeah, it's fine, right? There's a lot of benefits to Micro Four Thirds sensor for like macro work and long distance, telephoto type work. At those two extremes, that pixel density is perfect because you're getting more pixels on the subject per square millimeter of surface area of the sensor, and you're really not sacrificing much, if anything, because you're in macro photography typically using flash, so you got plenty of light. The signal noise ratio is way more than enough, and for sports action where things are at a distance, given the same focal length, right? 300 millimeters on a micro four thirds sensor and 300 millimeters on a full frame sensor, you're going to get a lot more pixels on a micro four thirds sensor than you will on a full frame camera, even the 60 megapixel sensor. Um, and it in the micro four thirds, especially with the new stack sensors in the OM1, the OM3, uh, you get the benefit of faster frames per second, faster write speeds, faster processing overall, uh, than you ever will with an equivalent full frame camera. And so there's so many benefits to Micro Four. Like I said, where it loses ground is like event photography, and you want to have that safety net of being able to push and pull more than 2 stops, right? Uh, then yeah, maybe you might want to consider because a lot of events are indoors at night, parties and things, and you may want to consider a full frame camera in those scenarios. I've never needed to. I've done plenty of event photography with my all-in-one, and clients are very happy. Um, Thomas is here. Good to see you. And Jeff, good to see you. Gord, hello. You're listening while you drive. Wow. I could never do that because I only have 5 gigabits on my data plan, so I would be stuck. Um, and hiker dude, you need to email me, rob@robtrek.com, because you won a license to one of my DxO products and you've not gotten back to me yet. So you need to email me, rob@robtrek.com. I was about to give it away to somebody else, but I said I'll see you in one of the streams eventually. So email me after this. I forget which one. It was one you wanted. I think you wanted the Pure Raw, right? So let me know if you still want that Pure Raw 5. I have the license ready for you. You won that like a month ago. Anyway, so any suggestions for reviving dead Lumix G9? I've tried different batteries, cleaning contacts, leaving the SD card out. Camera never dropped in rain on, but is 6 years old. Ideas. I can't think of anything. It sounds like you've done it all. Clean the contacts, different batteries, different SD cards. Um, yeah, sorry, man. I don't know what to tell you. Uh, um, the only other thing I can suggest is maybe try to clean the contacts on the power switch. I forget. I don't know where it is exactly on the G9, but you can get contact cleaner and try and clean that. You may have to disassemble or use a Q-tip. I don't know exactly. You can try that. There's this spray that you can spray in there. It's electronic contact cleaner. But I don't. Yeah. Other than that, I don't know what to tell you. But definitely email me, rob@robtrek.com. Man, I've been sitting on that license for a month. And ATR Bear, good morning. And Manuel, good morning. God, in Florida. You and Marsha are in Florida. Gosh, I'm so jealous. John Steiner, good morning. Uh, I have explored that. So he's asked me if I've had a chance to explore the OM3 recipe hub. And I tried the first two, the black and white and the other one. I do mostly post-processing now, so in-camera recipes don't, just don't have that flair, just don't interest me anymore. But I tried it because people are asking, can you use these recipes on other cameras? And I tried it on my Pen F, and the recipes work on my Pen F. So you can apply them to the Pen F. The instructions are a little bit different. They said on the OM3 you have to put it into like uh, STP mode, or I forget what it's called. And then, but on the Pen F you have to put it in storage mode to connect it to the computer to be able to upload the recipes. But the recipes do not work, say, like on an OM1 or EM5 Mark III. Those are the other two cameras I tried it on. They definitely don't work on that. It makes sense because those cameras don't have a creative dial. I suspect they will work on the EP7. Um, so, because that has a creative dial on it. So I suspect it'll work on those files or on that camera, but I don't know if the EP7 can connect to the computer and save custom profiles or not, like the PenF does. It's certainly capable, but it's a matter of if they put the connection, if they made it so you can connect it to the computer that way and be able to save and offload presets. But I have about 5 or 6 recipes that I made, but I just haven't shared. I shared one of them uh, earlier this year, but I have 5 or 6 recipes. I'll try and put them up on the hub so everybody can download them. And I'll make them available on my channel too to members, but they're going to be available completely free if you can find them on the OM3 hub. So I'll spend some time on that. I don't know when I'm gonna have some time. It's a really low priority for me doing color profiles because they're a lot of work, and ultimately they're interesting, but they're not the same as say the Fujifilm simulations. Uh, no, I'm not talking about the Fujifilm recipes. The Fujifilm recipes are are not too dissimilar from the OM3, how you program recipes in. But they have some additional things like chrome and blue effects and a couple other things that uh, give you a little more flexibility or additional options for creating recipes on Fujifilm. But the OM3 is limited strictly to just color saturation. So, for example, if I'm taking a picture of, let's just make it simple, I'm taking a picture of a red brick wall, right? And my custom profile doesn't do anything for red. It doesn't increase or decrease the saturation for red and oranges. If you take a picture with a recipe, let's say it desaturates the blues and saturates the greens, but doesn't do anything with the red channel. If you take a picture of a brick wall that's red, it's going to look exactly the same whether you're using the recipe or not, more or less, because it only affects the saturation of colors that are already in the scene. So it's very limited, and a lot of scenes are can be very monochromatic like that, where it's just one color or two colors in the scene. Like sunsets, typically lots of reds, right, and yellows, oranges, kind of in that warmer range. Very few off, very little green and blue, right, in a sunset scene. So most recipes will not work well with that kind of scene, right? Because you're not really shifting. Now you can do white balance shifts and things like that, but you don't need a color wheel to make white balance changes. You can do that in any camera. So the that's why it's tough to make a recipe that's going to work well with any scene. The recipes are very color dependent, and if that color is not in the scene, it's not going to make much difference. And that's true for a lot of different types of scenes, like sunsets, sunrises, um, a lot of landscapes, uh, photography. It's not going to make much difference because landscapes typically there's a lot of blues or a lot of greens or a lot of reds and yellows, but not usually all three at once in everywhere in the scene. Uh, and recipes will make very little difference. Where it can make a difference is like for street photography in places like where Robin Wong lives, where it's very colorful in the street, right? You can point the camera in any direction, and there's like a parade of colors there. And that in those situations, the recipes will make a very definitive difference, and you'll see it. Uh, but here, where I live, a lot of the buildings they're very monochromatic, glass and steel, or uh, there's usually not a lot of colors in a lot of things that I take. There are some exceptions, of course, but uh, and I could show you a few, but where I live is very monochromatic. Like if we take a look at the like this, what do we have? Just mostly reds and a little bit of blues. So if I made a recipe, I might be able to saturate or desaturate the reds and saturate or desaturate the blues, and it'll make a little bit of difference. Uh, you can also adjust highlights and shadows. So there's something there. But let's take here's another building. Now this has some colors in it, but mostly sort of these browns and reds, right? And yellows. Nothing else there. Uh, here's a another one, mostly browns and reds in here. Very little else of anything. And then let's take this landscape scene. Some greens and reds here, but no blue. So yeah, I think a color profile might work here, but the reds are very subdued. It's mostly, this is mostly yellow. This is mostly yellow. So reds and greens are not going to make a lot of difference. Even though it looks green, there's so much yellow in this green that color profile wouldn't do much there. Now this night scene, we have mostly reds and blues, but and a little bit of yellow. So yeah, color profile might work here. Um, the one I just showed earlier, this particular image here, uh, yeah, the blues in this are very, very subtle, so it's not going to make a lot of difference. The greens and yellows in this might get a little more saturated or desaturated depending how you program your color profile, but there's nothing else here. So this is the challenge that I have with a lot of color profiles and making color profiles for the OM3, the PenF, etc. Is the this scene here. This definitely, when I apply a color profile to it, you can see a pretty substantial difference because every color here is representative. There's a nice parade of colors here. Here's another building. What's in this? Mostly browns and yellows. That's about it. And this blue is very desaturated. So it's not going to make a lot of difference applying a color profile to this. Now, adjusting highlight, shadows, midtones will definitely make an impact, but that's better for black and white type photography. Um, so the black and white profiles are a little bit more interesting because you can adjust the color filter, right? Red, green, blue. There's like 8 color filters for the black and white photography. And that can, the black and white profiles I think are a lot more interesting than the color wheel and using the color profiles. At least for me in the kind of photography and the locations that I go to, the color profiles don't make a whole heck of a lot of difference, but the black and white profiles do. Okay. Yes, I believe they do. They sent me the Sony one, but I believe it's also available for Nikon. And System Natura says, "Hi, Robin, everyone from relatively warm, sunny London, UK. Yes, no problem with the, oh, thank you. Okay. And Eric is here. Good to see you. And yes, the weather is fantastic. What lake is that with the fog? Oh, that Fountainhead Regional Park. It's about 35 minutes south of me. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Great landscapes. Yep. And the Great Vanzini, good to see you. And thank you for the compliment there. Not so warm and sunny. Where's this? Nottingham. Oh, okay. And Manuel is a new member. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. You can support the live streams just by becoming a member for 99 cents a month. I picked the minimum lowest only because a lot of people ask me, why don't I have a membership? I said, okay, I'll make one. And the stream stalled. Oh, I hope it's back on. I hope it's back on. And Robert's here. Good to see you, Robert Volk and Robert from local. He's local to me. There's another Robert here. Good morning. A lot of people went to the I don't know the major. Let me look it up. I can't remember what Scott Kelby, I think it's called. Yeah. A lot of people went to the Scott Kelby photo walk yesterday in DC. There's some good images here. I really like, a lot of inspiration here from, I think this is, I can't remember the photographer's name, but this is one of those reflection shots, right? But it's beautifully done. And nice shot of a dog there. This is from Manny. It's a nice framing, right? Frame within a frame. Apparently, somebody was shooting their wedding here, and well, it kind of depends. I'm assuming you're thinking about more like artistic type photography, right? As an art and a craft. Well, not craft, but more like an art. We're not talking about like birds in flight, which is very different kind of photography, right? Sports action is different than, say, doing landscapes and creative photography. Street photography is often considered an art. And, really, the first thing, at least for me, when I look at a scene, is I always look for the light. And I know you've probably heard that before, but I really try to look for the contrast in light. Like, do I have really dark blacks in the scene together with very bright, strong highlights, right? And and then I look for geometry. So I look for geometry where things are balanced. These are the two things I think about when I'm doing composition: is the lighting, the direction of lighting, shadows, the dynamic range of the scene, and then the geometry in the scene, like the buildings or the people, layering. And you always want to try to create depth. So try to think of things in three dimensions. And how are you going to present that on a two-dimensional image? So a very simple way is just rule of thirds. In the bottom thirds, you want to have sort of a foreground in the middle, the mid area, and then a background, right? So you have three layers there, and you want to try and layer it. So I don't know if I can look at any of my recent examples here. Um, we'll just start here. But yeah, the foreground here, I have mostly the sidewalk and the street. Then in the midground, I have all of the vehicles. And then the background is just the sky, right? So I'm trying to create the depth. And I'm also very conscious of corners where lines come in from the corners and lead into the subject here, which is this bus. And then we have nice accents here for lighting, right? So I have a really strong dynamic range, right? I have very strong highlights here and here, and then I have very dark blacks all the way around in here. And ideally everything, because your eyes follow the brightest part of the image. These are just kind of speculars, so these are ignored mostly, but most of the light is right in here, right? So your eye starts kind of here, but as you wander around the picture, the lines kind of lead you back in, and it's all dark and all the way around here. And to me, there's some depth here, right? Foreground, midground, and then background, we have this building and the sky. And this one here is, again, about the dynamic range of the scene. I have very strong highlights and very black blacks down in here, and then, of course, the sky. I actually brighten the sky a little bit because I like that blue hour kind of look, but very strong highlights and very strong blacks. And then the geometry, of course, of all these intersecting lines. And I try to balance the scene so that one side is not heavier than the other. And in this case, I'm balancing it with uh, a light. So I have very strong highlights in this corner and very dark, not blacks, but very dark blue over here in this corner. So the scene is kind of split right down the middle here at a diagonal. with the highlights over here and the darks over here. That creates the balance. And then the geometry and the intersection of this geometry, I think, is very interesting. I also have triangles. Triangles are always a good way to introduce sort of interest into the scene. Uh, and in terms of depth, you know, it's not quite, I don't really have three dimensions here, right? I have a little bit of foreground, but everything is pretty much right front and center, right in your face. And it does lead back into here. Uh, so there's a little bit of depth here because of the leading lines, but it's not a strong example of something like that. But it is a very good example of geometry and balance and leading lines, of course. Um, Here is also about geometry. I was very careful to balance these street lamps against this building, right? That nothing crossed over in here. And then this is a front and center, so I have the center of the building or corner of the building right in the center. And then the sidewalks here, the crosswalks here kind of frame the foreground. Then we have the background, and this is sort of up in the front also. So again, I'm using the geometry and the balance, and I just thought this was kind of an interesting shot. It didn't get a lot of likes on my Instagram, but that's the same thing just at night. Um, Again, here I'm just using leading lines. Again, watch the corners going up from here into the sun star. This image was really about the sun star and creating the sun star. Uh, but there's also some good depth here, right? If you look at this first third, right up to the lamppost, whoops, the lamppost of the image, the first third is just the foreground, is just the sidewalk. And there's some nice textures here. Then in the middle, I have the sun star and this lamppost, this parking sign. These are all little accents, right, to the image. And then the background, these buildings, right? And again, I have very strong contrast between very darks and blacks over in here, and then very strong light in the background. Same thing here. Again, watch the leading line. A lot of these street photography, this is not really street photography, this is more architectural. But I'm trying to, this image here is for reviewing the lens and the sun stars that this lens can create. So I wasn't really applying my normal photographic eye to these images. I was trying to really create a sun star and make it kind of interesting. But I still have the basic principles that I go for: leading lines, depth, geometry, and dynamic range. So very, very strong highlights here, and nice dark areas down here. And again, it's kind of balanced. This image here, again, we have this foreground here of the train sort of speeding by. And then the building here is more of a backdrop to the train, and then the sky in the background. This one here is, again, just light and shadows. This is a good example of an image that in color, this looked terrible because of all of the haze and glare that I was getting. And there really wasn't any colors. This building is brown. So I just converted it to black and white after the fact. I wasn't actually planning to shoot this in black and white, but I couldn't get the colors to look good. So I said, screw it. I like the lighting. So I put it in the black and white. And again, the same idea here, right? The foreground, mostly the street here, nothing else going on, very simple foreground. Then in the mid area, I have all these cars. And then the backdrop is sort of these buildings. And then again, the geometry. This, I mean, you can kind of see a theme here, right? Foreground is just mostly street, nothing here. In the middle here, lots of interesting details and colors and light, and a huge dynamic range from these very bright windows to the very dark sky. Uh, This is about balance. I have very dark stairs going this way, then underneath the stairs is much lighter, the geometry. So uh, this is a simple rule of thirds. This image here, right? This first third here is the foreground, just water, right? The reflection, of course, but there's not much detail in this area here. It's just to kind of give your eyes something to ease into. And then the main subject here, rule of thirds, over here on the left, nice strong light coming onto them, and then also lighting onto the trees. I can't wait till fall when these colors start to come out. And then the background, not much, just this fog and haze. Uh, but there's not much geometry here to speak of. No leading lines, no architecture. This is strictly about light and balance, right? And depth, creating depth. And I also got very, very low down to the water because if I was standing up, I could have got the same shot, but then the water would be filling up half the frame, right? So if you get down low, you can minimize the water so that there's less, it doesn't fill the frame quite as much. In this case, it's only filling a third of the frame. And then use the other two-thirds of the frame to create the depth. Um, but anyhow, this is a shot where I was kind of standing up. I was on a tripod actually, so you can see the water. I'm splitting the horizon in half, right? Half and half. And I made this super wide because there was too much sky and too much water. So I made it a super wide, a 16 by 7 to minimize how much water and sky there was so that you could just focus on what's going on here. So again, I have some lines leading out from the the right side going into the frame and then just kind of bending around with the fog. I don't know. These are okay. These are shots a lot of these I took last night and I took this morning, uh, simply to review these individual products, that lens and this little camera here. I wasn't going out solely for doing, and I feel like I never go out and do just regular photography sometimes. But yeah, so think about those things, right? The dynamic range of the scene, highlights and shadows, right? Make those extreme as possible. And then think about the geometry and if there's balance there between geometry and lighting. And then think about depth, right? Foreground, midground, background. And if you got those down and look for those in every scene, I think that's a good head start. And then from there, you want to expand on the things that you like in your image, right? So maybe you're not drawn to the extreme dynamic range, right? You like softer, flatter images or low contrast images. And there's lots of those out there that are amazing. But you like the geometry or you like negative space or you like, find things once you start to you're able to identify the elements of the image that you like, right? Then you can start to put together your own sort of style and uh, create a vision and create the images that you enjoy. And never think about what are other people going to like or enjoy, right? Because everybody has different taste and different ideas. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so to speak. That's why you never see me enter contests or competitions. Uh, because I don't really care what anyone else thinks of my images, right? A lot of the images that I take are just for me to enjoy, uh, and it doesn't matter to me if this is prize worthy. So, not that I'm not impressed with the images that do win these competitions. A lot of them are amazing, but there was another image. I got to show you this image. I got it in an email See if I can find it. Uh, so I subscribe to National State Parks, America State Parks email. Somewhere I subscribe to this. And these are the 2025 contest winners, right? Overall grand prize winners. Oh, sorry. So overall grand prize winner is this image. I mean, this looks like something somebody just used their cell phone and took a picture. I don't know what the judges or whoever decided that this was the winner, but they have a very, very different perspective on what's a winning image than I would pick, right? So I'm not being critical of this image. Congratulations, Diana Lee. Beautiful picture. And it has a lot of it does have a lot of peace to it and calm and does kind of give the essence of what our uh, state parks or parks here in the United States are all about is people enjoying time out in nature. And if that's what they were looking for to convey in their image, then yeah, this wins, right? But and again, these images aren't being submitted for their artistic quality. There's a certain thing, but there's no way I would have won this contest. I would not have submitted this person. I wouldn't have submitted an image like this to be to whatever this competition was, right? And that's why I don't submit to competitions because my vision of what would represent the state parks uh, would be very, very different and a very different vision from what they were looking for. And that's fine, right? Uh, here's typical landscape scene, uh, camping. I like this one, but it doesn't look quite right though. It's a little bit too clean. There's a moose. Wonderful. I like this one. Family and friends winner. Here's another one. This is great. Activities winner. So, uh, fan favorite. Yep. Very muted colors here, right? Just a little bit of browns and then gray. So this would be another one that wouldn't work too well with a color profile. But out of all of these images, personally, I would have ranked this lowest. But this was the grand prize out of all of them. And I don't know how many images were submitted. Uh, but this is not my contest and not my vision, right? So it doesn't matter what I think. Just like when I submit my images to, if I were to ever submit my images for a competition, it doesn't matter. I don't care what they think about my images, so that's why I don't enter. But anyway, how do I get back to the chat? Okay. One of the biggest issues I ever had with exposure and only able to use LED lighting was doing photos and videos of bats in very low light situation, no flash allowed. Really? Because I've seen some flash pictures of bats. That was pretty amazing from years, and you've probably seen the same one, right? It was like on the news everywhere. But maybe that's why they stopped because now everybody wanted to go out and do the same shot, so they told everybody no more, no more, no more flash. But yeah, LED lighting has to be really powerful. Uh, yeah, that would be tough, especially for video. only flying visit today, so have a good day. Bye for now. Okay, Stuart, we'll catch up with you later. And have you ordered the Kodak camera yet? Robin Wong seemed to be enjoying his. No, I have my toy camera. I showed this last week. Where is it? Yeah, this one. This is the bomb, man. This is the toy camera for me. And it takes nicer pictures, in my opinion. I mean, from the images that I saw in Robin Wong's video, this is better. I mean, I don't have them side by side to compare, but this is way cooler as a toy camera. And to record video, you crank this. How cool is that for video? Wayne is here. Good morning. And yeah, right, like I said, in there's different places in the world where they use a lot more color, right? Here where I live, it's very, very monochromatic everywhere I go. You'll see just hints of browns and yellows everywhere if there's brick. If it's glass or it's glass and steel, so it's going to be mostly grays and blues. Uh, Now, when I go into Old Town Alexandria, there are certain streets where there might be three or four houses that are next to each other that are different colors. And those are always interesting, but that's far and few between. Marco, beautiful weather in Connecticut today. Enjoying the stream with a hot cup of coffee and a pup out in the backyard. Nice. Nice. God, life is good, huh? And Tan van Brushman or Bruchem, hello from Holland. And welcome to the stream. And Rob Trek got a great image on arriving late in Furnace Azores with the mist. View from hotel room is amazing with the mist being generated from the volcanically heated lake. Oh, wow. That is cool. That is really cool. And Chuck says, I photo walked through DC a couple of years ago. The subway was so convenient. Sadly, the Air and Space Museum was closed. I'll have to go back. Yep. Um, I was going to try and make it to that photo walk. And then I started looking for parking, and half the parking garages were closed in that area. And there was one open, but they only had like 20 spots. And I was like, well, by the time I get there, those 20 spots will be gone. And then there was another garage that was open that I was thinking about going to. Uh, and then I looked at the route. I mean, it's only like I feel safe when I'm in DC, even though we're with a big group. I mean, I used to go into DC not every night, but three, four times a week back when I was young and dumb. Uh, and but now I don't know. My tolerance for DC crowds and noise is pretty minimal. But DC is beautiful though. It really is. I just need to face my fear. I just need to go in. But when I went to DC 2 years ago, I got $100 ticket and I said, I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have gone back in, you know? Oh, thank you, Gear. And love the sun stars on some of your photos. I've tried to get photos using my anamorphic 24 Sirui lens with the blue flares, but does not work very well with artificial light. Oh, really? I don't have that. I know what lens you're talking about, but hmm, just got here. Where were these photos taken? So, the architectural ones were taken mostly in Alexandria on Eisenhower Avenue, and uh, the woodland lake type photos were two different parks. One was both in Prince William County, I believe, but One was called Prince William Forest Park, and the other one was called Fountainhead Regional Park, both in Virginia. Great place for early photography is Joins Point Park under the built some bridge. The whole scene is surreal. Yes, it is very nice there. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow morning. Let's see. Tomorrow morning might be another really good morning for. It's not going to get that cold tonight, though. I think it's only going to get down to like 60 degrees. You really need it to get like down to 50 or lower, and then the daytime temperature needs to be around 80. So when you got like that 30-degree spread, that's when I noticed there's a lot of fog. And Adam says dropping in and out of the feed seems DxO starts off oversaturated when I start. Is that simply setting up a different import setting, or am I doing something wrong? I need to watch the tutorial. Uh, I hadn't noticed my images being oversaturated, but uh, I was working on this one this morning. You can make sure you got DxO wide gamut selected here. That should be by default. And then generic rendering, and then select. I like to just use natural. I use that the most. Vivid is the most saturated. I'm sorry, vibrant seems to be the most saturated. Vivid is brighter but saturated. And then the portrait one looks really good for people, I think. Or you can select neutral colors. So what I would do is try selecting the neutral color under generic rendering and set that as your default. You can make your own presets. Oh, that's the unedited image, and that's with my editing. Where's oh, see, like I created a preset here. Uh, so once you get a starting point that you like, then create a preset for it. Then you can just jump to it. But try neutral color and see if that helps. And you can also in your preset desaturate as well and save it. So do neutral color and desaturate a little, and then that can be your starting point if you feel like it's too saturated. Darko just got back. Okay. And Michael says, "Thank you, Rob. Great advice. Photograph for the joy of it, not recognition. I need to repeat this in my mind." Yeah, do it for yourself, and do it. Make images that you like. Haggerty said, "With Prime Days coming up soon, would you mind once again explaining your tripod head setup for multi-roll panos? Thanks." Oh, okay. Uh, and you sent an email from your Hotmail. Okay, let me see if I got that because uh, I don't see it yet. I'll check again before the stream ends. It's it may not have pulled my server. Oops, I need to get back to okay. So I bought a new tripod that has it all. But the basic idea, right, is you want you want to have okay, you want to have a leveling, you want to have an inverted ball head. or a leveler of some kind so that you can level the tripod. Okay. And the difference between the inverted ball head and a regular ball head is that once you lock it and you have it leveled, oops, sorry. Once you have it leveled, let me just lower this down a bit. Okay. Once you have it leveled, you want to be able to rotate above, you know, the rotator needs to be separate from the ball head. Because if the ball head was the other way, when you start turning the head, but if you have the ball head on top of the ball head, then as you rotate this, it'll stay level as you rotate it. So that's for doing level, if you're just doing one row across. And then if you want to do another row above and below that, you need to use a fluid head. So the fluid head is also on top of the rotator so that when I tilt this down, as I rotate again, wow, this is really kind of a little bit hard without having a camera on here. But as I'm rotating this, again, I'm staying completely level as I do the row below because I'm above the rotator here. And that's the basic idea. So this is what I used to have. I have a lot of different types of things here, but this is your regular ball head, right? I got this thing tightened down like a anyway, the rotator is on the bottom. So if I level this, but then I rotate, it doesn't stay level as I rotate it, right? Because the rotator's on the bottom. So if you have this kind of ball head, you can buy a leveler separately, like this, and put your ball head on top. I have another rotator on top of this. So there's a lot of different ways to go about this. Uh, but some people just buy the leveler, and this is great for leveling, right? So you can buy one of these levelers. This is also a leveler, but this gives you a little more precision. It takes longer to level things, and I don't think this is necessary anymore. But this is very, very precise because you can adjust each wheel individually. And then on top of this, I also have an indexer, which helps a lot too. Uh, this is an indexing rotator so that you pivot to each point exactly the same. This makes the workflow a lot faster, but it just adds a lot of bulk. And then the other option is you can just get a rotator by itself. And then you put this on top of your ball head so that once you have your ball head leveled, then the rotator is now on top, right? So you can pan. But the problem is when you tilt forward to get your next row, you might accidentally change the horizontal, we'll call this the x-axis. You might accidentally tilt the x-axis a little bit as you're pivoting it down or pivoting it up. So that's why a fluid head is so nice because when I tilt this down, I'm not changing the x-axis or the level. I'm just tilting down and then I can rotate exactly level. So I prefer this as far as doing multi-row panoramas is inverted ball head Make sure the rotator's on top, then a fluid head. And then here I have, this is not a nodal rail, but you could add a nodal rail in addition to the fluid head to minimize parallax, right? Parallax errors. Uh, so this is my tripod of choice for doing. Unfortunately, it's not available anymore. I think they have an orange one for sale, but they jacked the price up to like almost $300. I bought this on a Prime Day sale for 169. No brainer. I just bought it instantly because this had everything I wanted in it. Now, it's not ideal for photography though, general photography, because there's so many moving parts, it is a little bit cumbersome to to get your to just for normal photography, like you're just going out on a photo walk, you're not doing panoramas. This is There's just too many moving parts because I have the inverted ball head that I loosen, I have a separate rotator, I have the fluid head, and then I have the nodal rail. So there's just a lot of moving parts. Never mind, extending all the legs and everything. But uh, that's the idea. Is so if I have that, I could put this indexer on top, but it's already kind of bulky like this. This is already kind of bulky as it is. But I used to do this. Man, I had this. The nice thing about this index rotator is you don't need a separate, but I used to do this. I had I had my leveling base, my indexing rotator, um, oh, I had a ball head in between. Man, yeah, I would have this ball head in between, and then I had my indexing rotator on top of this. But that didn't solve my problem of tilting forward and down for multi-row panoramas. And of course, once you start adding all this up, it gets kind of crazy. And you can buy smaller versions of all of that. I wanted to make my life simple, and when it went on sale for 169, I just bought it. Now my life is very simple for doing multi-row panoramas. Inverted ball head, rotator, fluid head, nodal rail. Now I'm reviewing a new tripod that's an inverted ball head with the rotator on top. And that's great for single row panoramas. You could do multi-row, but you kind of risk that, losing the x-axis. It's in my car. I had it out this morning. Um, but I got this came in yesterday. Oh my God, I love this thing. It's an L bracket basically, right? And it has some quarter 20 screws here. I was doing some other stuff, but it has an Arca Swiss clamp right here. Because a lot of my cameras, they just have the base plate, but no L bracket, right? I'd have to buy an L bracket separately, but 9 times out of 10, I don't use an L bracket. But when I do, I can just slide this on and clip it, and now I have an L bracket very quickly. And then when I'm done doing my verticals, I can just take this off and put this back in my bag. This was a little bit expensive. I paid 35. It's normally $40. It's made by Small Rig. I'm going to be talking about this in another video. I bought this, so I'm not being sponsored or paid, and they didn't send this to me. This I just saw it, and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing. This is so good." I might actually make a video. I don't know if I will, but I might make a video about this. This is amazing. This little orchestra. It's made for gimbals, so that's why you may not see this right away if you're looking for something like this. And I like the fact that it has the quarter 20 screws because now I can attach my GoPro, or not GoPro, this is a Insta360, to the camera at the same time without attaching it directly to the camera. And now I can do the camera point of view shot with this. So I might start making some videos talking about composition and how I compose my images, what I look for, things like that. Because a lot of people have been asking me to do that. I mean, I never thought my images were that great, but so that's why I don't really do those kind of vlogs. But people keep asking me, so this will be a great tool for that, but it's also a great tool for doing verticals. If you're like me and you like to use full base plates on all of your cameras, this is amazing how quickly. Because what I was doing before was God, I was using these things. These are generic L brackets, right? So sometimes I had to take the base plate off. So now when I look for base plates, I make sure they have quarter 20 screws in the bottom. So now I can just kind of screw this on and I have a base plate. But it's kind of fiddly, right? If I screw this on, it doesn't take that long. And it's like half the price of the one I just bought. But I can screw this on, and now I got kind of the same thing, but I have to make sure that it's not crooked like this a little bit, right? Or it gets loose when I put it on my tripod. So I have to make sure it's straight, make sure it's tight and straight. So there's a little bit of room for error here when you mount it this way. It's half the price, but you kind of risk it 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 tilting or being slightly, I'm exaggerating here, but it be slightly out of alignment. Whereas this one, you don't have to worry about that. This is this is 90 degrees, 100% 90 degrees. And then you level it with your inverted ball head. I have my rotator, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I'm being a little fanatical about it, uh, just because I like to do panoramas. And when I get the images back in post-processing, when I have a perfectly captured multi-row panorama, it makes the stitching process very, very clean, and I don't have to sit there and pixel peep and look for defects, right? Which happens all the time because a lot of people they just get their camera out and just click, 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 and they get like this puzzle of images that the software has to try and figure out and put together. And either they took way more images than they needed to, or they didn't take enough, right? And you end up with these wonky panoramas, even though you might be able to get something to work. And with some practice, you can probably get pretty good at hand holding and getting good panoramas. But I just, I just, I'm, you know, I'm just being a little fanatical about it. I just like everything to be precise and very easy to do. The only thing I wish that this had, because I've seen tripods that have built-in indexers, but it wasn't the ball head wasn't inverted. It was a regular ball head, but it had the indexer built in, so it's even more compact. So it's about the same size as this, but it had the indexer built in too. I'm gonna have to ask it, I'm gonna have to look at the brand of that tripod or that ball head again and see if they sell something similar with an inverted ball head and a fluid head. Maybe I'm asking too much. But I'll be streaming Tuesday, Wednesday for the Prime Day stuff. Hopefully, we'll find some good deals like that. Yeah, the grand prize winner. Yeah, it's not. That's why nobody. They should not care what I think. But I would not have picked that as a grand prize winner. Signatures of rock. Yes, absolutely. With your images, I do photos and video because I love going out and shooting. Never enter any competition If anyone likes my efforts, then great, it brings them pleasure. Yep. And Darko says, what's the difference between photography, fine art, and personal photography that most of us do, in your opinion? I don't know. uh, I guess fine art, if fine art has a definition, it's stuff people will pay for. I don't know. The fan fave is good. Yeah, that was probably my favorite too. The fan fave. And but that's kind of a style that's in I'll pull it up again. That's kind of a style that's in vogue right now. America's State Park photo contest winners. So this style is very, very popular right now, especially in wedding photography, to have very muted colors and not a ton of it's kind of a low contrast in terms of lighting and also low contrast in terms of color. And it's relatively monochromatic. It's mostly these reds and some yellows back here, with everything else being gray. But I like it too. What can I say? Yeah, the camping one doesn't look right. Yeah, it looks like it was taken with a cell phone because a lot of the colors were clipping. Like there wasn't any tonality, so I'm guessing that it's probably taken with an iPhone or something, or a cell phone, I should say. Yeah, I saw this at a state fair. Yeah, but like I said, somebody else might look at it and have the exact opposite opinion as you do, right? So who are we to judge? And Darko says, I think art, although subjective, needs to have an appeal and understanding to a broader view than a personal shot or even a local street photography images. I guess. I mean, there's a lot of art that you hear about all the time was not popular at the time that it was released, like Vincent van Gogh. He couldn't give his paintings away, and now they're worth millions, right? So some art just comes into fashion later. Oregon ID plug here for DTAP. This is the way I would go. Pair of 60s side by side. Even then, this is a little bit rough, and make sure you use the reflector dome, right? To project the light even stronger. So it's going to narrow your field of view somewhat, but it'll definitely concentrate the light a lot better. I mean, 30 watts is pretty good, but 60 is better, right? Another stop, another stop of light there. And then you can use another stop of shutter speed. So if you're like at one, I would imagine you're probably like at 1/125th. Imagine being at 1/250th instead because you got an extra stop of light. I have a fluid head mounted in an adjustable cup with leveling bubble for my Manfrotto tripod. Mainly video, but have never thought of using it. Oh yeah, yeah. So a lot of landscape photographers that like to do multi-row panoramas, they'll use video heads. I mean, technically this is a video tripod, right? Uh, but the one you're talking about is with the cup where you kind of adjust the leveling from the bottom. That's just way too big for me. Because I'm putting what, my OM3 on here, uh, my tiny little cameras, and those tripods with the bowl in them, they're like 100 millimeters or so. They're like this big. It's a bowl, and then you have a leveling thing that goes in, and you adjust it from the bottom. But a lot of people that because they're still shooting DSLRs and big heavy lenses. Maybe they're 70 to 200, or they're 100 to 400. They're big lenses doing landscapes, and that would, yeah. And Paul says an old surveyor's method on three thumb screw leveler have the level bubble parallel to the line between the thumb screws. Okay, and with each hand on the two thumb screws, you rotate your thumbs into. Oh, that's a good tip. So what you're saying is put the bubble level here, and then I adjust these two screws. That's awesome. Because man, when I'm out there, I'm like sitting there tweaking this and this and this. But that's a great idea. There's additional bubble levels here and here. So you can level all of these by eye this way. But this definitely gives you more precision. Not accuracy. Accuracy is relative, but precision, right? Uh, well, accuracy is not relative. Precision is relative, but precision is different. Then turn the head so it's 90 degrees and then use third screw to level that axis. Turn the head so it's 90 degrees. I'm gonna have to make a note of this. That's a great tip. I just print screen your notes there. See? You don't know what you don't know. I could see that. I have to practice that with this. Okay. Thanks, Paul. Roderick, that smaller L bracket and ease of clipping on and off looks so useful. I already have a lot of small rig attachments. Yeah, it's awesome. And it's so light. It's aluminum, of course, but it's so light. They didn't like use a ton of aluminum, unlike this other L bracket. I don't know where I put it. The other L bracket is aluminum, but it's thick, you know? This is really thin and very lightweight, and a couple of extra screws everywhere. If you have to do cable management and things, that's what it's made for, is like a gimbal. But yes, my problem is if I don't remember to bring my glasses, I can't see the bubble up. Oh, that's my biggest problem. Both brands do work image-wise, so focus speed is not an issue. Oh, that's interesting. So the Lumix lenses are using faster focusing motors. Because you're using what, mostly the 25 and 17, right? And I think you have the 15 also now. I would imagine a 15 has very good focusing motors. That's a lens I want to get one day. On your there are parallel bubbles already. Yep. Practice on a table. Okay. I have to try that because I bought this and I used it a few times and it was just taking me forever. But maybe using your tip, I can get better results. I have to try this on. I have to give that some thought. I have to try this on some of my cheaper tripods. Okay. Wow, I'm all caught up. So looks like we're all set. Um, so we'll call it there. I don't know if I'm still live or not, but hopefully we are. But I appreciate everyone coming in today. Thanks so much for joining me. I posted most of the images to my Flickr page that I've been taking. If you want to look at them, Pixel People and whatever, uh, and get some ideas and think about some of the tips I gave about composition and getting the photographic eye, so to speak. Because it's really that simple. You look at lighting and depth, and then try to balance it either through geometry or through the lighting. And that's a good place to start and develop a foundation to developing your own style. And then I will be back Tuesday and Wednesday. We're going to do a lot of shopping Tuesday and Wednesday. I've almost paid off all my credit cards, almost about another $300. So it's probably have to do it next month. But I'm ready for Christmas so I can rack up my credit cards again. But we're going to do a lot of shopping tomorrow for gear, cheap stuff. I'm going to try to put together $100 packages for beginners and then pick out a few really useful items. I'm definitely going to talk about this and a tripod, a little bit higher end or mid tier for those that don't want to buy beginner level stuff, and then filters. But thanks everyone for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Um, and you guys eat healthy, exercise, and we'll see you again next week. Have a good week.